everyone, it's Jenny from Serendipity, and today's video is not about patchwork, but instead I have another fun and quick sewing project for you. These small pouches are perfect as mini wallets with detachable neck or wristlet straps, ideal if you're on vacation and just want to take some cash and a bank card with you, or a great gift for a kid that starts school in a few weeks. You can make it match their school bag, and they can use it for lunch money and their bus ticket, for example. There's a flap with a button on the front which covers 2 pockets wide enough for credit cards and customer cards. And on the back there's an additional zipper pocket for coins and other small things. Over the course of the video I'll show you different ways to attach the straps and how to add the button as well as eyelets. For my sample wallets, I chose fabrics by Moda and Free Spirit. For the ones on the left, I combined a K-facet fabric with one from the Moda Grunge collection. And the ones on the right, I made with Tulip Tango by Robin Pickens and Laurel Wood by Brenda Walton. All of these are still available in our shop, and you'll find the link to the supplies list in the description below. But now let's get started. I have already prepared all the pieces for the back and for the front of the wallet. 2 pieces for the flap. A small one for the little tab for the strap holder. 1 piece for the zipper pocket on the back. And 2 pieces for the lining of the main pocket. Then there are a few pieces of thin fusible interfacing. A zipper pull, and a small D-ring if you have one. And for the flap, I have prepared 2 templates for you to download. You can find the exact measurements for all pieces on our blog post, which I have linked below. I will start by ironing the interfacing to their corresponding fabric pieces. For this kind of project, I like using the Vilene H200 interfacing, which provides a little bit of stability without making the fabric too stiff. It's a fusible interfacing and I'm using my iron on a medium temperature. It's setting 2 of 3 and without steam. I'm usually counting till 8 or 10, and that should be enough time for the glue to melt and to stick to the fabric. To make sure you iron the interfacing long enough, wait a few seconds for the fabric and the glue to cool down, then pick at a corner of the interfacing. And if it comes off, you need to iron it again. If it doesn't, you're good to go. We'll start sewing with the 2 pieces for the flap, which have been reinforced with the interfacing as well. That's especially helpful since it will later prevent the button from tearing through the fabric. I'll align both pieces with right sides together and use the larger template to draw the cutting line. I'll use a pin to keep the 2 fabric pieces from shifting, and then I will use my fabric scissors to cut out the flap. Now you can either use the 1/4 inch presser foot of your sewing machine to sew these 2 pieces together, or you can use the smaller template to draw on the sewing line. Then you can use your regular presser foot, which sometimes can be easier when sewing curves. I'll put my pin back in, and then I'll sew along the seam line with the rather short stitch length. That way you will be able to sew a much smoother curve. Now trim the seam allowance. and turn your flap right side out. And then you should work on your seams a little bit to make sure you have nice and smooth curves. Press your flap once more. And then top stitch all around your flap for a more professional look. The flap is now done and you can put it aside for later. Next we'll work on the back side with the little zipper pouch. For that you have 3 fabric pieces, 2 from the exterior fabric and 1 from the interior fabric. And we'll start by sewing the larger exterior fabric and the interior fabric to the zipper. Center the exterior fabric piece on the zipper, right sides together. Then place the interior fabric on the other side of the zipper with the right side of the fabric towards the left side of the zipper. Sew these 3 pieces together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Then unfold the fabric pieces and press them away from the zipper. And because it looks much nicer, I top stitched along this seam as well. Now we'll add the remaining part for the back side. Center it on the zipper, right sides together. Then fold up the fabric for the interior of the zipper pouch and make sure that the edges on the sides match up. The right side of the fabric should again face the left side of the zipper. Sew these 3 layers together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now fold up only the small piece of the exterior fabric. Press it. And top stitch. Now when you turn over the back side, you see that the interior of the zipper pouch is automatically closed at the bottom. Before we can move on, we have to add the zipper pull to the zipper. For that, I pull apart the 2 sides of the zipper a little bit. And then I use a pair of craft scissors, not my fabric scissors, to cut out 2 or 3 of the plastic teeth of the zipper on one side. I thread the zipper pull onto the other side of the zipper, only a few millimeters, and then I push in the side with the missing teeth into the second hole of the zipper pull. To make sure that the ends of the zipper don't accidentally open up while we're sewing the backside in, you should stitch them closed with a zigzag stitch. Use the widest setting you have and a very short stitch length, and a few stitches over the zipper teeth are sufficient. Now we need to make sure that the backside has the size that we want. And it should be 5 inches wide and 4 inches high. And since it's a little bit larger, I just cut off a small piece at the bottom edge. And using my craft scissors, I cut off the zipper so that it is flush with the side edges of the fabric. And now the back side is finished as well. Next we work on the front side, and for that we have to make a few marks. First, measure 3 1/4 inches from the bottom. And also 6 inches from the bottom edge as well. Now fold your fabric piece along the markings you just made. The first marking is a mountain fold, and the second one a valley fold. Now fold everything together, and the first front panel is done. Now top stitch the edge of the mountain fold. To make sure the front panel stays like this, use a very long stitch and baste the two sides together. This piece should now have the same size as the back side, 5 inches by 4 inches. Yup, that looks very good. Next we have to work on the very small piece for the loop, which measures 2 by 1.5 inches. Fold it in half so it is only 1 inch wide, and then fold in the two edges towards the center fold so it will only measure 1/2 inch. Top stitch both edges and insert it into the mini D-ring. But if you don't have a D-ring, that's no problem at all. Just leave it and you can just use the fabric loop on its own. Use a basting stitch to sew the two edges of the loop together. Now we can go ahead and join all the separate elements of the bag. And I'll start by marking the center on the back side. And I'll use this mark to sew on the small loop. I use a very small seam allowance, and this assures me that the loop stays in the middle of the bag and won't move later. Next, I will add the flap. I mark the center and then align it with the top edge of the back side as well. If the two sides of your flap are different from each other, and for example one has a pattern or a motif that you want to be on top of the flap later, then this side of the flap should now face downwards. To make sure your flap is really centered, you can use your patchwork ruler and assure that you have 1/2 inch on both sides. Now you can sew the flap to the back side as well using a very small seam allowance. Now it's time to get the two interior pieces and align them with the top edges, right sides together of both the front and back side of the pouch. And it is correct that the interior pieces are a little bit smaller than the exterior pieces. That way we can reduce the bulk of all the seam allowances in this small pouch. Now sew together the interior and exterior pieces along the top edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Press the seam allowances towards the exterior fabric. Repeat these steps with the front of the bag. Align the top edges of the interior and exterior piece and sew them together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. This time, press the seam allowance towards the interior fabric. Now we'll join front and back side of the pouch, place them right sides together and make sure that all edges align. Make sure that the seams where inside and outside of the pouch meet match up exactly. To achieve that, you can push the seam allowances that we have pressed in opposite directions into each other. Use needles or clips to fix the edges all around. Sew inside and outside together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and make sure that you leave a large enough opening in the bottom of the interior. Use this opening to turn your pouch now. Now that looks like an almost finished little pouch. Let's close the opening in the interior. Now that I have pressed the little pouch once more, I can top stitch all around the opening of the pouch. I used a stitch length of 2.8, and especially when you get to the side seams or to the spot where we added the loop in the back, go slowly with your machine. You have a lot of layers and you don't want your needle to break or to slip and you end up with a wonky seam. The little pouch is now almost done, but before I show you how you can add the push button to the flap, I wanted to show you a few more alternatives. For example, you could top stitch the front and back side before you sew the two pieces together. In this case, you would have to press the seam allowances on both pieces towards the exterior. And the top stitching would only be visible on the exterior side of the pouch. Sew front and back pieces together like I have shown you before. And make sure that the side seams match up nicely. Here you can see once more that the top stitching is only on the exterior fabric and not on the inside of the pouch. If you would like to use the wallet as a wristlet, you can also attach the loop for the strap to the side of the wallet right above the zipper. And now I will finally show you how to attach the push button. For that, I fold the flap in half so I can mark the exact center and measure about 1/2 inch from the bottom edge. First, I need to make a small hole, and I use my pliers for that. It's not perfect, but neither is that little tool that comes with the buttons and that you have to hit hard with a hammer. I don't like to make that much noise and annoy my neighbors. I'll just use some scissors to cut off any remains, and as long as the button goes through the hole, that's all that matters. These buttons consist of 4 separate elements, and these are the 2 for the top part. I use these pliers that come with interchangeable tools, and I can never remember which tool works with which part of the button, so I always keep those little leaflets from the packages to look that up later. Stick the flat and shiny part of the button from the outside through the hole you just punched, and push the counterpart onto the pin of the tool so that it can't move when we put the 2 parts together. Place the shiny side of the button into the hollow part of the tool and press firmly. and that's it. Now you need to find the right spot for the other side of the button. That is easy to do when you press the top part of the button. It will leave a round mark in the fabric below. You should quickly enhance it with a fabric pen before it just disappears. Again, punch a small hole where you made that mark. And then the other two elements of the button have to be attached. First, there's a thin plate with a small tube on top that goes on the inside, and the little knob goes on the outside. Now I have to change the little bits on the pliers, and there's actually a special tool for that, which of course I have lost right away. So I have to do it the hard way, but that's my own fault. First, there's this little tool with a rubber all around, and the other one has a small hole for the knob of the button. Place the element with the small tube onto the tool with the rubber. You can really push it in there and the rubber will hold it in place. Stick that little tube from the inside through the punched hole. Place the element with the knob on top and firmly press the pliers. The second part is now in, and you should be able to push the button closed. The little wallet itself is now done, but of course it's missing the strap. For that I have cut a 2-inch wide strip, folded it in half, and then folded the edges towards the center, just like I did before with a little strap holder. This strap is supposed to go around the neck, so I cut it to 1 meter or about 40 inches. Make it shorter if this wallet is supposed to be for a child. Thread the strip through the snap hook and make sure the strip isn't twisted. Then place the short ends right sides together and sew them with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Press open the seam allowance and then fold the strip back in on itself. Top stitch the strap along both edges. Last but not least, I added a small seam right in front of the hook so it won't move along the strap. This is the long strap if you want to carry the wallet around your neck, and if you want to use it as a wristlet, I recommend a 40 centimeter or 16-inch long strap. There is one more variation I want to show you, and that is the one without a self-made strap, but instead with a thin cord. For that, you can leave out the small loop and D-ring, but instead we'll add 2 eyelets. For those, I have already prepared 2 holes through the back of the wallet. Eyelets have 2 components. There's the front part with the tube on top and a thin plate. And I don't know if you can see it properly. I try to shift the focus a little bit. There we go. On one side it's flat, and on the other side it has a small bulge, and that is the side that should face the fabric when attaching the eyelet. I've already prepared the pliers with the correct bits, and the one with the pin is for the thin plate, and the one with the hole in the middle is for the front part with the tube. Push that part from the outside through the hole in the fabric and place the thin plate around that tube. Make sure the front part is centered and snug in the recess of the tool so it can't move. Then you just need to press the pliers firmly and the eyelet is done. Repeat the process with the second eyelet. Now you can simply thread a cord through these eyelets. On the one hand, you don't have to sew a strap yourself, and on the other hand, you can easily shorten and lengthen a cord as you need it. That was it for today. I wish you a lot of fun combining fabrics for this little project, and I hope you enjoy sewing a few of these wallets yourself. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!